Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Scott Schilling Speaks. I am Scott Schilling and very fortunate to have a friend here. The reason for the evening background is it is evening here, but it is morning in Sydney, Australia, with my good friend, Oscar Chavez. Oscar, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott.
So, obviously through Australia, and you've done so much great work actually around the world, but people might not know you. I mean, this is the founder of the boardroom, $17 billion in mergers and acquisitions. That's all you could manage.
Yeah.
A billion two in sales. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, wonderful. So, look, I grew up in a war-torn El Salvador. When I was 2 years old, my parents sought refuge, and we found that in Australia. Very thankful to the Australian government for that. But all in all, we grew up in the kind of rough area of town, and so with that, my parents, I saw them work really hard. That my dad at one point had 3 jobs. At one point, they had 2 jobs each. I mean, these guys taught me what it takes to be resilient and to succeed and to really achieve their dreams. And my mum always raised me with the belief that you could achieve anything, that anything that I put my mind to, I could achieve. And so I really grew up with that. Didn't do too well in school, but when I was about 17 years old, really started playing with entrepreneurship, really started seeing the value of doing things not the traditional way and outside the box thinking. So while a lot of my friends were packing boxes, I was out doing magic shows and earning $500 per hour to $1,000 per hour. And it really skyrocketed my earnings. And so that really taught me the value of non-traditional thinking and non-traditional doing. And so since then, I've really just been trying to push outside my comfort zone, achieve more, do more, get around incredible people, because I did hear that you are the sum of the 5 people around you. And so I thought, I got to get better friends. And so just that whole process of really hearing things from people that really inspired me and just implementing. And that's kind of, that's a little bit about me, Scott.
Well, that's awesome. I was going to say I didn't get the El Salvadorian accent there, but it makes a lot of sense. Totally get it. I know we were introduced by a mutual friend, Howard Berg. He's going to be on the show very soon. And, he said, you need to meet Oscar. He's a speaker. He's a best-selling author. He's a high performance expert. He's done all these different things. And he's got just an amazing story. So what is your secret to entrepreneurial success?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think for me, it really all does start with mindset. You can have the best marketing strategy in the world and bring clients, but if you don't have the right mindset, the business will topple over. Likewise, if you've got all the marketing and you've got all the clients in the world, but the business model is fundamentally broken, then eventually the business will break. So there's 2 things that people really don't think about a lot before they even start or launch a business, which is, what's my mindset going into this? Who's around me in my environment that's going to continue to shape the mindset for me to become the person that I need to be? And what's my business model within that market? The third thing that people also don't think about is what is the market dynamic in which I'm going to play? What is my experience in that market? Because chances are, if somebody enters into a market and doesn't fully understand that market, doesn't have the experience in the market, hasn't touched and felt the market, hasn't had the customer complaints in that market, hasn't really understood truly deeply what the customers actually want, then chances are they'll fail. And the thing is, Scott, I play the numbers, right? So I know that most entrepreneurs fail. I know that most businesses fail. I know that most people that want to achieve something will unfortunately not get there. That's unfortunately what the numbers say. And so we have to set ourselves up for success to make sure that we can play the numbers, get around the right people, have the right business model, push into the right mindset, develop the right habits. And unfortunately, there's no one secret to success. But if I could boil it down into, let's say, one secret, this is what it would be. And I call it my BAHO method. And so BAHO, so B stands for beliefs, A stands for actions, H stands for habits, O stands for outcomes. So anyone in any point in their life can have a look at their outcomes and reverse engineer the beliefs they need to have in order to get to where they want to be. So O stands for outcomes. So whether we've got good relationships, bad relationships, whether we've got healthy bank account, bad bank account, whether we feel like we're on the right path emotionally, spiritually, it all comes down to and boils down to the beliefs that we have. So if we get out of bed in the morning and think to ourselves, it's going to be a hard day, it's going to be another day, this type of stuff, they have the beliefs that will produce that bad outcome. Whereas if they spring out of bed in the morning, like my friend Mark Golston, who's also another incredible speaker, I taught him this method, and he said, I've never gotten out of bed so happy in my life. He's normally a guy that gets out of bed, a bit grumpy when he gets out of bed, let's say. But using this method, he was able to really get a lot of clarity, get more productive in his day because he changed his belief systems. So I think entrepreneurs out there really need to focus on what their belief systems are. What are they believing in? And I also love a book by Mark Manson, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. And that really, and another book called Essentialism by Jim McCowan. But essentially these two things really speak of, if we care too much or if we believe in too much, then it stops us from really caring about the stuff that we really need to believe in. So I find a lot of people getting worked up over, what's going on in the news or what's going on in, a current affair or what's going on in the telenovelas or the soap operas, right? Or on the footy. And so what that does is steals their energy away from the things that should be really important to them in their lives. So that if I could boil it down to one thing, Scott, it'd be the Bajo method.
So when you, obviously, I'm looking at some of the books behind you and seeing some of the titles, and obviously you shared a couple of titles with us there as well. You've worked diligently to feed your mind with good information. True?
Yes, absolutely.
And so as you surround yourself with better people, as you surround yourself with people who have a desire to achieve, does it naturally just kind of absorb in your body, or do you really have to take significant action towards that learning to gain some of the mastery that you have in your career?
I love that so much. There's an effect. Let's say I like to say learning through osmosis, right?
Right.
So when I get in these rooms, when I get in these environments, I do always have these jaw-dropping moments. Like yesterday, we had a board session, and hearing Marco Roberts speak to one of the business owners that came on, really experienced investment banker, has put together billions of dollars of transactions, sold 1% of NAB to Westpac. Like this guy is a really sophisticated business owner. And just hearing Marco really dissect him in a very quick way, understanding, how much longer he has to work in his career, how much money he needs to make by the end of that career, identifying whether he was on that path or not. I mean, yesterday I was just, jaw dropping because I feel like I'm very good at this stuff. Like I'm really good at this stuff, right? But getting around people that are better than I am just, floors me. So that's the first thing. First is getting the experience. But the more important part is writing down what you learn and implement it, finding a time to implement it, and then implementing over and over again. So what happens is with the Bajo method, if you have the right belief, that should produce the right action, which then should produce the right habits, which produce the outcome. So being in the room is not enough, unfortunately. Being in that room is not enough, because I go to entrepreneurial conferences with 5,000 people. I'll speak on stage. Will all of those 5,000 people be successful because they've heard these incredible line of speakers? Unfortunately not. There's something that happens. They need to write it down. They need to turn the belief into action. They need to turn the habit into an outcome. And so again, with the reverse engineering, if we don't have the right outcome in our life, it's because we don't have the right belief. And so getting in that room is probably the first step for people to really transforming their life into what they want it to be. But then comes the action. Then comes turning those actions into habits by repetition and committing to it for a total of at least 29 days. And then that should produce the outcome. But it won't happen before 29 days, or sometimes even 6 months, 12 months, 36 months, 5 years.
So a part of entrepreneurialism then is consistency, right? Being able to take the step, take the action, repeat the action, gain the feedback, realize that you might need to tweak the approach a little bit. There's no specific game plan when you say, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. It's a little bit of a wild, wild west, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, saying you want to be an entrepreneur is kind of like saying, I want to get up tomorrow morning. I just want to get up, right? It's like
Right.
good, you achieve that, but then what's next? So entrepreneurship defines, I guess, the fact that we want to solve problems. But what problem do we want to solve, and do we truly understand that problem? And does our solution actually solve that problem in the first place? And do people actually care about paying to solve that problem? So there's so many steps in afterwards of saying that we're an entrepreneur to actually nail before we can get the right outcome. So it is, Scott, in consistency. I come across a lot of entrepreneurs that are juggling, too many different things because they've heard don't put all your eggs in one basket, and so therefore they'll, disperse their energy. But each of us only has 24 hours in a day. Each of us only has the ability to 100% focus. And so if we focus, say 10%, 10%, 10%, then we'll get a 10% result in each category. Or actually, if we're lucky, we'll get a 10% result in each category, which may not lead to 100% of the output that we could have gotten if we focused on one thing, made it really great. I used the example yesterday in a boardroom session that yes, get your eggs into a basket so that it's a healthy basket, and then put military around that basket and go focus on building another basket. That's how you do it. You don't go kind of like, okay, I've got a basket, there's no eggs, so I'm going to go lay this other basket over here, no eggs in there, another basket over there. That's not the way to build an entrepreneurial empire. You've really got to focus on one thing. And one of the things I teach my students is, and it came from, I mean, I didn't create this. It came from Robert Kiyosaki, which is focus, FOCUS, which is follow one course until successful. And that's what focus is. And when I heard this, it changed my life because I was, putting all of my energy in various different categories rather than following one course until successful. And I thought, okay, 90-day sprints. I'm going to do 90-day sprints. I'm going to commit to a strategy. I'm going to get my game plan. I'm going to set myself targets. I'm going to put KPIs on myself. I'm going to hold myself accountable. And when you do that, Scott, and you hold yourself accountable and you create a plan and you live that plan for 90 days and you have, measurable outcomes that you can have at the end of those 90 days, that's where people's lives start to transform.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any doubt about that fact. I love the fact of, developing the first basket and then guarding that basket and then starting on the next one, as opposed to starting on 10 baskets at once and really having nothing particularly going anywhere
Yeah.
from that side. Now, I was reading an article where they were grilling you a little bit, and you were sharing some of your successes on walking into various businesses and being able to fairly easily spot their deficiencies or where their issues were. Where does that come from? The ability to identify and then solve those problems so quickly?
I'm lucky in that I have a personality that I think is suited for entrepreneurship. I have by nature always been incredibly curious. As a musician, when I listen to music, I'm understanding each of the layers. I can hear the drums specifically. I can hear the bass specifically. I really, my mind just really wants to dissect everything and understand it in its various components and layers. But for people that don't have that, that kind of creative mindset, and by the way, Scott, creative people have the hardest time making money, right? So it's not like I have this incredible blessing and I don't carry the curse. So if people want to understand more about business and where they're going wrong, firstly, they need to become very curious. And it's a mindset. So when I walk into a meeting, I follow the 3C formula. And I learned this from Hugh Hilton. So real estate, part of the Hilton family, real estate billionaire. But he taught me the 3C model. And I took this into every single situation that I ever had, and it completely improved my life. In one meeting, it led to another $20 million of pipeline. I knew the 4 people that I needed to speak to in order to get the projects off the ground. And I was able to book meetings with all these people just because of this model. And here's the model. The 3C model is firstly curiosity. So you got to go in being very curious. See, a lot of salespeople walk into a situation, they know what they want to pitch, they know how they want to pitch, and they want to do all the talking. But they just have to shut up and be very curious, really start to understand more about that person and be very inquisitive about the nature of their lives, the dynamic of their problems, what they're trying to achieve. And so if we walk into a situation and we start to become very curious, That's the first C. The second C then is creativity. How can I creatively use all of this information that I've been given to position my services in a results-oriented fashion? And so if we can then apply that bit of creativity, we can then get to the third C, which is commitment. What's the next step? What are we committing to together? What's the next step? And so if people want to be able to quickly dissect a business, they should use that model: curiosity, creativity, and commitment, and they'll see their results absolutely skyrocket. Because instead of being anxious about their brand and about what they say and how they're being judged and all these things that happen in the minds of human beings when they enter into sales situations, they can just still the mind and just focus on the other person, be very curious, and then they can achieve a different result.
I think it's very interesting you say that. I was doing a training with a group earlier today, and I said the one thing that we've lost in this day and age, in many cases, is the art of creating curiosity. We, right? We want to show everybody what an authority we are and how much we know and how smart we are, and so we got this urge to purge. We want to give you everything we got, right? Before we really even get you to the point where you want to hear anything I say, right? So that it's that I love the idea of creating curiosity like that, and then the creativity beyond it, and obviously the commitment and the stick-to-itiveness to make sure that change and that challenges happen. I think far too many, as a sales trainer, many days of my career, I say that people tend to make sales and the entire proposition much harder than it is. It's 4 words: identify problem, provide solution, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where that curiosity comes in as well. So I really love that. That's a great model. How long have you been utilizing that model as kind of your diagnostic tool and, part of you being a change agent then?
I've been using that model for about 3 years specifically. But I mean, for the last 15 years, this has been my thing, because I always, for some reason, had, let's call it social anxiety. Even though I'd go up on stage and sing in front of thousands of people, that was a facade to kind of build my confidence up. But what would happen in one-on-one environments is that I would have a lot of social anxiety, partly because I grew up overweight. So I always had this, I was worried that people were judging me all the time, just always in my head. I was like, that person's judging, what are they going to think about me? It just, that's kind of how my life, evolved. And so when I would walk into sales situations, it was always about me not talking. I hated pitching because I'm already scared of people judging me. And as soon as you turn into a sleazy salesperson, they're going to lose all respect for you. And so I just always had that thing where I was just very curious about others. I would ask a lot of questions, especially, I'd have to go to a lot of cocktail parties and a lot of dinner parties, Scott. And so I'd be with very senior executives. I remember one specific event where I had a chief information officer of a very large Australian company. I was probably, let's say, about 25, right? 25. He was 60, right? So there's already a big age gap. And I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that all of the things that he's interested in are not the things that I'm interested in. We're from completely different worlds. He's a chief information officer. I work with a lot of chief information officers, but I'm a 25-year-old guy. I value very different things. I remember just panicking the whole night. We were together for about 3 hours. I was panicking the whole night, just trying to ask him questions, just trying to get him to talk about, he had a wonderful time because he was telling me about his family and his ranch house and all of his trips and his holidays and the amazing things he'd achieved. And I'm sitting there panicking, just trying to get this guy to talk for 3 hours. and so that was kind of the way that I really developed as a salesperson doing very large deals. I mean, we ended up doing multi-millions of dollars of business together. And so that's just the way I've always been, Scott, just very curious.
No, that's really cool. It's the way I am as well. So I get that completely. It's fun to ask people questions and just hear their responses. Many times they're not what you anticipate them to be. Now, I know you're also called the master of influence. So what are some of your best tips? I mean, we are in influencer mode these days. I mean, you got to become an influencer to have success. As a master in influence, what are some of your best tips for creating influence?
That's a great question, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently. The first thing is being very clear about what you can accomplish, the outcome. When people start businesses, they often think about the process. Everybody thinks in terms of process, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Then we'll get this outcome, which is not even an outcome. It's like a feature. And in sales, everybody knows features, benefits, but you got to take that to the next level and go outcomes, because CEOs just buy outcomes. And then you take that even a step further and you go, what are the true outcomes? So if you start to dissect all of your thinking and go, okay, what's the outcome of that? And then what's the true outcome of that? Then that's how you really start to develop influence and people start to really understand. Now, I've been told twice in the last 2 weeks that I use what they call, and I've never heard this before. I don't know if you've heard this before, Scott, but I was told twice from people that I was working with that those are motherhood statements. Have you heard this before?
I have not.
Yeah. So from two different people in 2 weeks, they're like, oh, those are motherhood statements. I'm like, I jumped on Google and I said, well, what's a motherhood statement? And it's kind of, it's a little bit derogatory, but it's like saying, it's like what it is. It's like a political statement that is always true no matter what, right? So very vague, very open, that you just cannot disagree with. I think for me, that's the first step of influence, is really saying things that people just cannot disagree with, right? They have to agree with you. And so if we look through the sales process, sales process is someone just saying yes, yes, yes a few times until eventually they say yes to a payment. And so being the person of influence, you've got to be able to position things in a way that show the buyer the outcome, but not just the outcome, the true outcome. So instead of saying, if you're running a weight loss company, for instance, and you say, do you want me to show you how to lose 50 pounds, right? It's not an interesting statement. But if you say, I'm going to show you how to lose 15 pounds in 2 weeks with zero exercise, then people are like, yeah, I want to see that. One of the things that worked with us on one of the social platforms, I mean, it had hundreds of comments, about 300 comments. I just put who wants to look at the free what was it? I put who wants a VIP ticket to a workshop where I show you the step-by-step system I used to do 3 million in sales, and everyone was like, yes, 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 yes. Because that's what they care about. They care about 3 million in sales. But other people, when they market their services, they're like, do you want booked leads, or do you want qualified appointments, or do you want I'll get you qualified leads, like all this, like, again, they're not I said a motherhood statement, and again, that's not a good word to be saying, but that's what I got called. But I'm saying these motherhood statements, and I'm absolutely crushing it in terms of influence. Some people don't like it because they want the detail, but people really need to elevate their thinking to the highest level in order to create the influence that they want. The second thing that I'll say about it is really, really important, and I learned this from Terence McKenna, an absolute amazing thinker and philosopher. I had to think about this deeply, Scott, but he said that language is the baseline of life. Language is the baseline of reality. I thought, what an interesting thing to say. And you think about our DNA, it's all built with language. When we speak with another person to seek agreement as to whether we're fighting at war and stealing each other's resources, or we're being friends and we're trying to achieve together, is language. It's body language. It's the words that we say to each other. When we barter and when we negotiate, we're using language. And so if we want to create a different reality in our lives, we have to start using the right language that's going to create the right reality. And so people really need to focus on what is it that I'm putting out into the world? What is it that I'm writing that's going to grab the attention? The first line of things that we say need to make people just like want to run upstairs, grab their wallet, grab out a $50 bill and give it to you, right? So we've got to think in these terms if we want to create the right reality. So I hope that explains
No,
a little bit.
I love it. What would you say is your superhero, your superpower? Why do people come seek you out?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know what? Because here's what it is. Here's what it is. And I only just thought about this now, but it's authenticity. Really, at the end of the day, I just know who I am, and I stand firmly on that, on who I am. and I don't care if anybody's going to judge me as a result or not going to like me. And it took me a long time to get to this place, but it was true authenticity. And true authenticity, because I've gone deep within myself to understand who I am, my fears, my concerns, my motivations, my drivers. And I really just stand in an authentic place. Now, some people I repel, some people I'll end up locking horns with just because of that fact. But other people will be attracted to I guess, the authenticity. But authenticity, unfortunately, is not enough, right? We have to be results driven. So for me, I have this personality where I will kick down doors. I will I will do whatever it, like, seriously, I will do whatever it takes to get the result. If somebody wants a specific result, I will do whatever it takes to get there. Like, there's like whatever it takes, right? And I don't need to go too much more. But I'm willing to upset people. I'm willing to offend people. I'm willing to break psychological hierarchical constructs. I had this one situation where, I work with a lot of banks, Scott. I do a lot of multi-million-dollar deals with banks, and I refuse to do anything with anyone unless I meet an executive, right? I refuse to burn time, burn energy, burn money, unless I know that I've spoken to a decision maker and there's a true need there. I will not waste the time. And so in one of the engagements that I was in, I got in and started meeting, and here's our contact, middle manager, unmotivated, didn't care, all he wanted in his life was just to be left alone, right? And I'm like, I'm not working with this guy. So I started understanding who the management was. I went and met pretty much most of the executives in this bank. And it wasn't just his boss that I met. I didn't even know it was his boss, but I met his boss. I met his boss's boss, the chief risk officer. And so I thought, okay, I've gone high enough into the bank. I understand what's going on from a dynamic perspective. And then I came back to meet with this guy. I'm going to call him, what's his name? I'll call him Robert, right? And I went down and sat in front of Robert, and he said to me, why did you meet my boss? And I said, this is what I do. I meet executives. My job is to make sure that we're strategically aligned here. And so, and I said to him, I didn't just meet your boss. I met your boss's boss as well. So I said it as a kind of, as a jibe to piss him off. And he said, I was so angry with you because you did that. I was furious, Oscar, that you went above my head and you went and spoke to my boss. And I said, look, Robert, that's his name, like his fake name. I said, look, Robert, with all due respect, I am meeting so many executives within your company. Do you want me to email you every single time I get a new meeting with one of your executives? And he said, that would be nice. And I said, okay, let's go to lunch. Let's talk about this over lunch. I'll buy you a steak. And let's just talk it through and figure out what you need from me, and I'll just make sure you get that. And we ended up building a fantastic relationship together. I bought him a very expensive lunch. We had a bottle of wine, and we ended up mending the relationship. But most other people are so scared of doing these types of things that they never they stay where they are. They're like, I don't want to piss off my customer because they're the ones that have the relationship, but they're not even the decision maker. So why are we holding on to those relationships? Let's break free from that kind of that stigma of what happens in sales environments. Let's break free of that. Let's talk to executives. Let's understand what's really going on. And I guess that's why people, do hire me, Scott, to do what I do, because I will kick down doors. I'll kick people in the chest, take no prisoners, and I'll just get the job done.
Totally can appreciate that. One of our folks within Be Connected, just always talks about, you can't be afraid to walk away. The reality is it's got to be a good win deal, and do all those kinds of things. And sometimes to get attention, you've got to do the things that it takes to get the attention. If they're not paying attention, you got to do those things. So I know you just came out with your 8-figure learning management system. That sounds pretty darn exciting, number one, but 8 figures, that's got to be a typo, right?
No, that's correct. I show people how to get from 7 figures to 8 figures. So what typically happens, Scott, is a business owner will really start to struggle around that $3 million mark. They can't quite get out of the detail enough to become leaders. That's where they really struggle. That transformation that happens between, say, 3 million and 10 million, they struggle to get to that next level. And so the 8-figure LMS is really about that step-by-step process. that you would take to get to get to 8 figures. So it starts off with mindset. The next thing is business model. The next thing is, how do we sell this stuff? How do we market this now that we have a few sales in the door? What do we say in the sales meeting? How do we pitch? Then how do we get leads on autopilot that we can, get out of bed and our calendars are booked? What are the proposals and the contracts and the sales process? What are the financial strategies, the templates that we need? Or everything, right? Everything that people need in order to get to that level. I've literally just put everything in that because it's my legacy strategy. So before I die, I want to create 100 millionaires from that program. And so I just thought I'd put everything in there that I think people need in order to live the lives that they want to live.
That's exciting. And I'm because of the depth that I know you, I know the quality that's in that product. There's no doubt about it. So could certainly help so many. So we've run across our time here, which we're going to have to do another show. It's just the way it works. But how can people get a hold of you?
So they can go to my website, Scott, at oscar-chavez.com. And if they want a breakdown of that of that 8-figure CEO program, they can go to 8figures.growthlymarketing.com. That's 8figures.growthlymarketing.com. There's a free 1-hour workshop that breaks down the step-by-step system I use to do 3 million on LinkedIn. And that then leads to, if they want to take the next step, they can have a look at the 8-figure CEO program.
Awesome. Sounds great. Oscar, I greatly appreciate you joining us here today. Some great nuggets. Can't wait to hear all the responses from everybody and look forward to talking again soon.
Great seeing you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us for Scott Schilling Speaks. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great night.
Awesome.